Let's get into this short notice UFC lightweight scrap as we have Francis Marshall coming in at minus 650. He takes on a former Bellator veteran and UFC newcomer Lucas Brennan, who comes in at plus 460. Now, this one was a little bit out of left field, right? You really expected Marshall to, not be on this card. He wasn't scheduled for this fight. I think his last fight was earlier this year. I believe it was back in February where he got that quick submission victory over Eric Silva. I don't really understand the reasoning behind him getting this spot, but he wants to stay active. He wants to try to get on his first UFC winning streak. So let's give him some action and see if he can actually get it done. Now, like I said, he is coming off that quick submission win over Eric Silva in February, quickly able to get the back of Silva, sink in the rear naked choke, and force the tap. But it's kind of been mediocre for Marshall through his UFC run thus far. He's 3-3 through his 6 fights with the promotion. He had that 2-fight losing streak to William Gomez and Isaac Dalgarian, but there is a big-time argument that he could be on a 3-fight winning streak had the Myron Santos fight been scored correctly. If you guys remember, that was a fight where there was a big uproar that Marshall should have won that fight. One judge scored all 3 rounds for Marshall, while the other judges scored 2 rounds in favor of Santos, hence why the Marshall ended up getting a split decision loss that night. But it was a close fight. I think Marshall dropped Santos in the first round. I thought he did good work in the second and third round. It's possible he probably could have even won 30-27, but for some reason, 2 judges didn't see it that way. Marshall, very solid prospect that originally started off in New Jersey under former UFC fighter Kurt Pellegrino, but in recent training camps, he's gone down to American Top Team and built a very close bond with Grant Dawson, and you can see Dawson often in his corner. They're taking a lot of pictures together. They are very close friends, very close training partners, and I'm sure that's going to rub off on the 27-year-old Marshall, who's looking to build himself up in the featherweight division. Again, this fight, short notice, taking place at lightweight, but as a featherweight, I think Marshall is much better than the 3-3 record that he's had through his first 6 UFC fights. His striking is improving, but I think at his best, he is a guy that can implement his wrestling and really wear guys down from that top position. And I think we're going to see him start to get more and more aggressive in terms of working for finishes. Now, he's going up against Lucas Brennan, BJJ black belt. I believe his father was an MMA fighter as well. Brennan on a 2-fight winning streak, but this is a guy that, back when Bellator used to take the long haul in terms of building their prospects, Brennan was one of those guys that they were leaning on to become a star. His first, I think it went 9-0 before he finally faced a little bit of adversity. But he was a guy who had his pro debut with them. He was a guy that would often go out there and really look to put it on his opponents with his grappling, try to get them out of there that way. But he really didn't face much adversity until he went up against Weber Almeida in August of 2023. That was a fight where I believe it was the favorite there, not as big as a minus 2,000 favorite that he often was earlier on in his career, but that was a fight where he was getting picked apart. Almeida did a great job in terms of keeping Brennan away from his grappling, but luckily Brennan was able to find a perfect knee in the third round with about a minute and a half left, which knocked out Weber Almeida out cold. Unfortunately, Brennan was unable to keep that winning streak going as he fell short against Dimitri Ivy in his following matchup, which so happened to be his last Bellator scrap. That was a fight where he came in as a minus 1,600 favorite against Dimitri Ivy, actually. Dimitri Ivy, brother of Anthony Ivy, former UFC fighter. But we saw Brennan struggle to get Ivy to the ground outside of round 2. In the first round, he was getting banged on the feet. He was getting out-clinched. His takedowns were not working. In the second round, he finally got to the back of Ivy, dragged him to the ground, and really grinded that round out, but was unable to get to that success in round 3, as Ivy did a great job in terms of nullifying the grappling and then picking Brennan apart on the feet to win that fight on the scorecards. Then Brennan went over to Fury FC and went up against another BJJ black belt, but ended up coming up short in that fight as well by split decision. It was a fight where Gomez did a good job in terms of securing some top control against Brennan and grinding out a lot of those rounds, even though Brennan was trying to throw up submissions off of his back. Luckily, in 2025, Brennan went to a smaller promotion, XKO out of Texas, and was able to pull off back-to-back first-round submission victories, which earned him his way back to the UFC here. Now, Brennan, very unorthodox striker. He's long and lanky for the division, but also when he gets to the ground, it helps him throw up submissions, triangles, get that mission control position as well. He's usually pretty good off of his back, and that's where he does his best work. He is a BJJ specialist, and the fact that he's only 25 years old showcases that he still has a lot of room to grow and a lot of potential. There's a lot of recent signees to the UFC that has you scratching your head, right? Julian LeBlanc was kind of one of those where you're like, why is this guy in the fucking UFC? And you saw Robert Valentin run through him in less than 2.5 minutes. Brennan is not one of those guys. Brennan will likely lose this fight, but he is a guy that can have success. You know, give him a full training camp, let him go down to 145, let him go out there and try to be competitive. But I think he can be. His grappling is that fancy that he could definitely catch some of these guys off guard. Now, he's going up against Francis Marshall here. Both guys youngsters, right? You got 27-year-old Marshall, 25-year-old Brennan. But I think it's going to be Marshall's wrestling advantage that kind of helps him replicate what Dimitri Ivy was able to do against Brennan. I think Marshall is the better striker. I think he'll be able to land a more effective damage. And I think that we'll see him actually just grind out Brennan here. I don't think he'll be completely lost should this fight hit the ground. We've seen Brennan get grinded out from that top position before, and I think Marshall can be successful in doing something similar here, but I think he would be much better off trying to land damage on the feet and trying to really get off by out-damaging Brennan in the striking realm rather than looking to out-wrestle him purely. In deep water, when Brennan starts to slow down a bit, sure, maybe you can get off away with something like that. But, you know, when you have a guy like Grant Dawson in your corner, your submission defense is definitely going to be up to snuff. I know Marshall got submitted by Isaac Dalgarian a few fights ago, but I don't think that Brennan has that type of, power grappling that Dalgarian does. Dalgarian, very strong from the top position when he's not throwing fights, that is. Very good with that arm triangle choke, which he caught Francis Marshall with. But I don't think Brennan will get much top control time here. I think we'll see Marshall outstrike him, maybe out-grapple him a little bit. I'm expecting this fight to hit the scorecard, so the over 2.5 around a pick-em price is not all that bad. Especially with how squirmy Brennan is, right? If he gets hit hard, he doesn't mind dropping to his back and kind of inviting guys into his guard and trying to get off that way. But I think he's going to struggle in terms of catching Marshall in something here. I'll be looking at the Marshall decision prop whenever it drops, but even the over 2.5 at even money, I don't think is a bad spot. So I'll go Marshall and Marshall by decision as my official prediction.